Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving deep into Yuval Noah Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. This book gives us a really thought-provoking look at the major challenges, the big questions facing us right now. It's a bit different from his others, right? Sapiens looked back, Homo Deus looked forward.
Exactly. 21 Lessons is very much about the now. It tackles this huge range of interconnected things: technology, politics, truth, terrorism, education, even meaning itself.
It really covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, and he breaks it down to these 21 chapters grouped into 5 main parts. There's the technological challenge, the political challenge, despair and hope, truth, and finally, resilience.
So our mission today really is to pull out the most important bits from the book.
Right.
To help listeners get a quick handle on its core ideas and, see why it's such a relevant read in today's world.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's kick off with that first section, the technological challenge, and the very first lesson, disillusionment.
Okay, so here Harari's basically saying, remember how everyone thought liberal democracy had just won, end of history and all that?
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
Well, he argues that the resurgence of nationalism, authoritarianism, it wasn't really expected, and technology is a huge factor in why it's happening. It's disrupting everything.
It's almost, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? We thought the internet, social media, they'd connect everyone, spread democracy.
But they've also become tools for, well, the opposite in some ways. Bypassing traditional media, spreading propaganda, misinformation. It happens so fast.
Directly to people's feeds.
Precisely. And that connects right into the next lesson, work.
Ah, yes, AI and automation.
Exactly. Harari raises this really unsettling idea that automation might displace so many jobs we could end up with a useless class.
Wow. That's a strong term.
It is. And it's not just about skills. It's that machines might just get better at many things we do.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask, what's our value if work isn't the center anymore?
That's a huge question. What does society look like then? He talks about lifelong learning, obviously, but also psychological resilience.
Yes, that's key. Being able to cope with that level of fundamental change, that uncertainty, is maybe even more important than just learning new job skills.
Okay, so the tech challenge also touches on liberty. Digital dictatorships.
Yeah, that's a major concern for him. Think about the sheer amount of data being collected.
Constantly.
By governments, by corporations. It chips away at privacy, obviously, but it also gives algorithms enormous power to shape what we see, what we do, sometimes without us even realizing it.
It does feel like being watched all the time. Online habits, purchases, health data.
And it's not just ads. It can be used to subtly nudge behavior, maybe even limit freedoms in ways we don't fully grasp.
Which leads right into equality, doesn't it? Control over data.
That's becoming the new power, he argues.
Yeah.
And the big worry is that this concentration of data power will make inequality much, much worse.
How so?
He talks about the risk of data monopolies, sure, but also these biodigital caste systems.
Biodigital castes.
Yeah, imagine a future where your place in society depends not just on money, but on access to and control over biological and digital data. Some groups get inherent advantages. It's why he stresses the need for, global rules on data.
Right, to prevent these monopolies and keep things somewhat fair. Okay, so that's the tech side. Let's shift gears to the political challenge. What about community?
This one's interesting. He looks at online versus offline life. Virtual communities are fine, but we're physical beings, Face-to-face interaction, he argues, is still vital for real connection, empathy, building strong societies. There's something missing online.
And there's that tension, too, between local and global.
Big time. We need global cooperation for climate change, pandemics, all that. But our loyalties, our strongest feelings, are often still very local, very tribal, and that gets in the way.
Makes sense. Then there's civilization. He argues we basically have one global civilization already.
Kind of, yeah. Despite all the cultural differences, he points to science, capitalism, technology. These forces have created a shared framework most societies operate within now.
Even with different traditions.
Right. But then you have the nationalism lesson bumping up against that.
The comeback of nationalism.
Exactly. Harari acknowledges it's strong, but he argues it's just not equipped to solve the biggest problems we face. Climate change, AI disruption, nukes. These things don't care about borders. You need international cooperation.
A purely national approach just doesn't cut it for global threats.
Pretty much.
Right.
Which then connects to religion.
How does that fit in?
He observes how religions often get kind of co-opted by nationalism. They reinforce the U.S. versus them, and sometimes they end up promoting national agendas over perhaps more universal values. Plus, he points out the clash when religious traditions ignore or deny scientific findings.
Okay. And the last one in this political section is immigration. Always a tricky topic.
He tackles it directly, talks about responsibilities on both sides, hosts and immigrants, the challenges of adapting, but also how cultures aren't static, they always change.
Right.
And a key point he makes is that a lot of the fear around immigration isn't really based on facts or actual threats, it's more irrational prejudice.
He distinguishes between, say, legitimate debates about integration and just like fear-mongering.
Exactly. And reminds us that the idea of some pure, unchanging culture is mostly a myth. Cultures evolve through contact.
Okay, let's move to the third part, despair and hope. First up, terrorism.
His take here is really insightful. He says terrorism is mainly psychological warfare.
How so?
Its real power isn't the physical damage, which is often relatively small compared to other violence. It's the fear it creates, our reaction to it.
And the media amplifies that fear.
Hugely. And when societies overreact, clamp down hard, they actually give the terrorists exactly what they want. They magnify the impact.
So we play into their hands by overreacting.
That's the argument. Then there's war.
Feels like we've had less big wars recently, but
the threat is still very real. Harari emphasizes human emotions, irrationality, old grudges. These things still drive conflict. And in our interconnected world, one mistake, one miscalculation
could be catastrophic.
Absolutely. So no room for complacency. Our flaws can still lead to disaster, which brings us to humility.
Natural humility.
Yeah, especially for dominant cultures or nations. The idea is no single group has all the answers or is the center of the universe.
We need to recognize we're all interdependent.
And acknowledge other perspectives are valid. It's crucial for peace and cooperation.
Okay, then God. This sounds controversial.
He questions whether religion is the only source of morality. Can we have ethics without God?
And his answer is?
Yes. He argues morality can, and maybe should, stand on its own, based on reason, empathy, well-being. Not necessarily divine commands.
Which connects to the next lesson, secularism.
Right. He defends secularism not as being anti-religion, but as a framework based on truth, compassion, responsibility, things grounded in evidence and human values, not divine orders.
But he also notes secular systems aren't perfect either, right?
Definitely. They need self-critique, too.
All right, fourth part, truth. This feels very timely. Starts with ignorance.
This is about intellectual humility. Basically, we all know a lot less than we think we do.
Especially now with so much information flying around.
Exactly. So we need to recognize our limits and learn to trust expert consensus in different fields, like science. We can't be experts on everything.
That's a big ask sometimes, but necessary. Okay, then justice.
Here, the idea is our gut feelings about justice, our traditional intuitions, might not be enough for today's complex global problems.
Like what?
Think about ethical supply chains or the implications of AI bias. These need more than just that feels wrong. They need like data literacy, systems thinking, a broader view.
A more complex approach for complex problems.
Okay.
Got it. And then post-truth.
Harari says fake news isn't new, obviously. Propaganda has always existed.
But it spreads faster now.
Much faster, much wider.
Yeah.
But his key insight is that the real problem isn't just the fake news itself. It's us. It's our human tendency to believe stories that feel good, that confirm our biases, even if they're false.
We're wired for emotionally appealing stories, not necessarily facts.
Pretty much. That's the vulnerability. And finally in this section, science fiction.
How does that fit with truth?
We cautions against taking sci-fi too literally as prediction.
Like expecting robots, just like in the movies.
Exactly. He thinks sci-fi often gets AI wrong, focusing on consciousness instead of what it really is, data processing, cognition. Its real value, he says, is less prediction, more ethical exploration, using it to question our values as technology advances.
Okay, that makes sense. Use it as a tool for thought, not a crystal ball. Final section, resilience. Starts with education.
And his argument is pretty stark. Traditional education, focused on memorizing facts, is becoming obsolete.
Because the world changes too fast.
Right. What we need to teach, he argues, is critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, the 4 C's, plus emotional intelligence, adaptability, how to learn constantly.
Skills for dealing with constant change and uncertainty.
Those are the crucial ones now. Then meaning,
The search for meaning in life.
Yeah, Harari talks about how we humans need narratives, stories, to make sense of things and give life meaning. Both personal stories and big collective ones, nations, religions, ideologies. But we should also understand that these narratives are ultimately constructed. They're illusions we create. They're powerful and necessary, maybe, but not objective reality.
Realizing their constructs can make us more flexible, less dogmatic.
That's the idea. And the very last lesson is meditation.
He's a big proponent of Vipassana meditation, right?
Yes. He presents it as a practical tool. In a world full of noise, distractions, and attempts to manipulate our minds.
Which sounds very familiar.
Meditation, specifically observing your own mind and body without judgment, can help build clarity, focus, and inner resilience. It's about understanding yourself better.
So wrapping it all up, this deep dive into 21 lessons, it feels like the book is less about answers.
Definitely more about questions.
Yeah.
Really crucial questions about where we are and where we might be heading.
It really pushes you to think critically about technology, politics, truth, and yourself, really.
Yeah, the big takeaway seems to be the need to understand both the world out there, the big forces at play, and the world in here, our own minds.
It's a call for what? Wisdom, humility, consciousness.
All of the above, I think. To navigate this century, we need to be aware, adaptable, and maybe a bit less certain about everything.
It certainly gives you a lot to chew on. It encourages you to really engage with these huge issues.
Absolutely. If you want to delve deeper into Harari's thinking on all this, definitely grab a copy of 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. You can find a link in the description.
And if you found this conversation helpful, please do subscribe to Books and Bytes. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.